All right, welcome to Rebel Rewind. Today, a very special guest, Bill Flowers. I believe he's fifth on the list, fifth or sixth on the list for career receptions. A star, played with Eli Manning. I think he is the one who caught the pass thrown by Ethan Flatt in the 2004 game-winning catch against South Carolina. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so we got a lot of stuff going on that we're going to talk a little bit about his favorite times at Ole Miss, what he's been up to, and what he thinks of the Rebels currently. So, how you doing, Bill?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great here, living in Birmingham, Alabama, and got three kids, and just getting old and enjoying the Rebels.
Yeah, after a long period where enjoying the Rebels was a hard thing to do, this year looks especially fun. But before we get to that, it's been close to 20 years since you wore the red and blue. What have you been up to besides kids in Birmingham,
Yeah.
Alabama? Yeah.
So after football was over, went back to Oxford, got into real estate for a little bit, and then decided to get my foot into medical sales. Um, Moved over here, been in that for 12 years. Married, with three kids, a 2-year-old little boy, a 5-year-old little girl, and a 9-year-old little girl. And the 9-year-old little girl, she's a golfer. So I'm hoping if I have any kind of old connections that I can get her over and maybe get a tour of the facility and get her to meet the coaches and some of the girls. Because last time I checked, Ole Miss just won a national championship in women's
Mhm.
golf. So I would love to get her over there, but she loves that, and I love playing with my kids, and it's really what I've been up to. Being a dad of three, you don't have much time for much else.
Yeah, and the university courses and pretty much the facilities over there are not what we remembered whenever we went to school back in the early 2000s. It's pretty nice now. So let's go back in time whenever you wore the red and blue. We talked about that catch against South Carolina. What's your favorite moment? What's the moment that stands out after 20 years in your Ole Miss career?
Well, obviously that's a huge moment. People don't realize that I was actually out for 3 weeks before that game because I had lacerated my kidney. It was a really deep bruise. Um, and I remember coming back, and uh, another thing that people really don't remember is that, or they don't remember it, but they didn't realize it, that I wasn't in that game during that. So it was fourth down, and they called a timeout, and I was not in the game. And so it's one of those moments where you're a senior, and you realize that the game's going to be won or lost. And as you realize in life, there's going to be moments where you get to choose: do I want to step into that situation, or do I want to bow out? And so here I am, a senior, and I just told Coach Cutcliffe, I came over to him and I said, "Listen, you're going to win this, or you're going to lose this uh, with somebody. You're going to let me win this for you." And they put me in, and touchdown. And that's a moment that you really realize that you take with you in life, because there's a lot to learn from that. That's obviously a great memory for me. But going down to Auburn in 2003, beating Auburn at the Plains, that the third down catch, we're in the back of the our 30-yard line. You literally, it's the loudest stadium I've ever been in my entire life. When Eli was in the huddle, we knew, you really couldn't even hear the play. It was, your eyes were rattling. Um, we get up to the line, and Eli looks over to me and checks off. And Auburn was playing a really good defensive scheme all night long. And Eli, they press up. They kind of go into a no man's land, and I go around the corner, and Eli throws a perfect ball for me, and I get hit, hold on to the ball, and we move the chains, and go on to score. And that was a great memory for me, with a lot of, being from Alabama,
Mhm.
having a lot of family that went to Auburn, friends at Auburn. That was a cool memory. Um, I'll tell you, one of the best memories I have is, people don't realize that Ole Miss was one of the first schools to have a the Astroplay. And so when we got that turf, it was in 2002, right before the 2003 season. And there were days where we would go out there as a team, and there would be the field temperature would be 140 degrees. Your feet would burn. We would do a thing called county fair where you have this circuit where you're doing a whole hour of just little stations, and you literally would pour water on your feet. And the time that you just grinded it with those guys and that camaraderie that you build during those times, that's that's something. And then one of my earliest memories is, these guys are so soft now. They don't have to go through 2 a days. But our my first 2 a days there, which was actually my last 2 days, we had 18 guys go to the hospital in one day from dehydration. And that that was a
Was that in
memory that I
'04?
won't forget. No, that was 01.
Oh, okay, '01. Okay.
Yeah, that was the
Because
last time they did 2 days.
because
Like
I was
full
actually.
pads, full,
Go ahead.
that was full pads 2 days. That's not powder puff 2 days now.
Yeah, no joke. Yeah, because I was at in the video staff in '04, so I was actually in the building at that point. Heck, I helped install all the Manning Center whenever the IPF opened.
Yeah.
Um, we did all that. Let's go back to '03. That team went 7-1 in the SEC. You talked about the Auburn game, and we're not necessarily going to talk about the LSU game because I have an interesting question because Tulane is sitting on the schedule for Ole Miss. And for y'all, it was a game at Memphis. And what is the deal with playing these G5 games like Tulane and Memphis in a series like Chad Kelly dropped a game at Memphis. Eli dropped a game at Memphis. Now Matt Corral has Tulane right before Alabama. That's a guaranteed trap. What do you think about that?
Well, I think all these teams are good, and you got to remember, look who the running back was against when we played. Mr. Williams was quite the man, and here's a story about that. So he was coming to Ole Miss, and then I think he decided to go to Memphis. And his story about Memphis was that everybody just told him, like, listen, you put your pants on one leg or the other, just like everybody else does. You're going to earn your spot. Everybody else was telling him, okay, you're going to come in and play, and right away, and he just decided to go to Memphis. Well, it really put a bad crawl in Coach Cut's mouth. And so the night before the game, he says, I want you guys to make him regret that decision. Let me tell you, man, we regretted it. I mean, that was a beast, and he was a great player. And so, that team had good players. Tulane's got great play. I would say good players all around. Everybody does. It's just sometimes those teams come to play. When you're Ole Miss and you're playing a team that's a dark horse or they're not supposed to win, just remember they've got good players too, but they've got a special fire in their belly for that game, and you can't ever forget that. And so you always have to be focused on that. And I think it's easier said than done.
Yeah. Looking at 2003 again, you actually have a little experience playing against Mike Leach in 2002, 2003. What were those games like, especially that wild one in Oxford?
Oh, man, only thing that I can remember from that game was the last drive, thinking, crap, they got the ball. That means they're going to win. That it was a joke. It was like whoever has the ball last wins. And that's all I can tell you when it came to Oxford. When we went out there, they threw tortillas. They threw flour tortillas from the stands, and they had AstroTurf. That was the first time I ever got to play on AstroTurf, and I loved it. Being a speed guy, playing on that you almost felt like you were a joystick. I mean, Leach is a great coach. He's a mastermind of offenses, and I'm pulling for State. I hope State does well. It only enhances the state of Mississippi. That guy's a character too.
Yeah, he absolutely is. We'll transition a little bit to a GA on Mike Leach's first staff at Texas Tech was Arch Briles, who led to Jeff Lebby, and now we're in the 2021 offense for the Ole Miss Rebels, Matt Corral and the boys. What do you think of the guys? They're running around doing stuff that's like light years away from what you guys were doing. What would you be like in this system?
Before I answer that, I just remembered you're going to kick out of this. So I was getting recruited by Oklahoma, and when I went out there on my official visit, um, the head coach, um, the head coach was Stoops. So Stoops had just gotten the job from Florida. He was the defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me, here's this guy that looks like a lawyer, briefcase and everything, and he goes, here's my defensive coordinator. This is offensive coordinator is Mike Leach. I could never beat him, so I got him to join me. And that was his first offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. So that was my first time ever meeting him was in Oklahoma when Leach when Stoops brought him over. But this offense that these guys are running, I think what I love so much about what our guys are doing is that it's a combination of what Broyles is doing, and then you have this pro style offense that Kiffin brings. To me, that's what allows this not to be a gimmicky offense. Leach's offense and these other air raid offenses aren't predicated on really establishing the run in a real way. I think that's what makes me excited about this offense. In the years past, you're thinking, okay, all you can do is a one-trick pony, and if you can't do that well for whatever reason, you're done. This offense has the ability to establish the run, focus on that, and open up the air. And to me, between the speed and the how it puts so much pressure on the linebackers and the safeties that bring them down, is what really allows a scheme plus talent to really click.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try to explain on my daily show that I have that this offense just basically tortures linebackers. They can't be
Yeah.
right. And if you're a great linebacker, you're going to have a bad day against Ole Miss. And that opens up the whole offense. It's the middle of the field between the back of the linebackers and the front of the safeties. We just attack that over and over again. Because if you try to take those away, we just give the ball off to Jerry and Ely or whoever's running the ball and that RPO, and they gain 5, 6, 7 yards, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I think to me, a defense that would be hard to really play against would be a defense that has a really, really, really fantastic D line, like big boys.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's going to happen is that would give the linebackers the ability to not have to come up so much, and be able to stay back. Last night they were talking about how where they had trouble last year was when they dropped 8. Well, what that's showing you is that they're dropping 8, and that's keeping the linebackers from having, listen, your job's not so much to stop the run, it's more to drop back. So if you do have a stonewall defensive line that can take the pressure off those backers, that's where we'll have a little bit more of an issue. But as long as we can establish that run and make that a key emphasis to where those linebackers have to stop the ball, have to stop at the line of scrimmage, it's going to be extremely difficult. And I think that you're going to start seeing these safeties coming up a little bit. Last night they're dropping 8. As long as we're able to hit those balls in that 15-yard range underneath those deep safeties, it's just going to be a track meet. But you watch, those guys are going to start coming down, and then that's when your deep balls are going to start opening up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be exciting. And what to me I was most excited about offensively was that Corral was able to be cerebral yesterday. He was able to check down and to take the reads that were given. He didn't try to do anything that he wasn't supposed to do. He doesn't have his key receiver from last year. And when you're a quarterback, if you really look at it, last year was his first year to really play. The year before he got beat out by Plumlee. So you take a quarterback like that, who's a gunslinger, who has a receiver like he did last year, and you put him in, you say, well, here's year two. There's a real concern that, from a mental standpoint, can he check down and read through the defenses and do what he needs to do, and to be able to read and distribute the ball. He did that like a surgeon last night. And that is what's going to terrify defense coordinators, that they've got a lot more on their plate this year than they did last year.
Yeah, I was watching the game last night and thought to myself, not necessarily how he played, but I thought that he played quarterback like Eli. He looked like Eli out there. Eli in 2003, where everything is in complete control. He's processing information left and right. There's no surprises. He's going right back just blind. He knew a receiver would be there through his progressions. You could see that thing. Because to me, Eli is the GOAT at Ole Miss. There's no Archie. There's no Chad Kelly. Eli is the GOAT. So if you get that kind of praise from me, that means you pretty well flawlessly mentally played the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Whenever you get put up there with Eli, with having a mental capacity to be able to do what you need to do, that's as high as praise as they come. And I think last night, not having the general of your team there to be able to help you and to help, he did everything that he was supposed to do last night that I think Kiffin wanted him to do.
Yeah, and I was very impressed by Snoop Connor. What do you think about this new defense, this 3-2-6 that surprisingly showed up in Game 1? I know you were on the Ole Miss team with Chuck Driesbach, and they ran the 4-2-5, and that was a weird thing then. So they've even added another defensive back. What do you think about that system?
So I would love for you to do a data dig on what was the weight of our average defensive lineman when we did that. I guarantee you they're much smaller than they are now. I bet you got to have some pretty big boys down on your front to be able to run that. And I think that's what we've got. So a lot of that's personnel. A lot of that's personnel to run that defense. You cannot have guys that are light in the pants. You got to have some pretty big athletic boys up front. Got to have fast linebackers to be able to come play the edge, and our personnel shows that a lot better this year than I think it did last year. But I mean, they absolutely played with their hair on fire. I think they did everything that a defensive coordinator could have asked plus more. I think the targeting calls last night were atrocious. I mean, come on, like.
Except for the one on Corral, they were all iffy to me.
Yeah, but I mean, these guys are playing with a confidence that, I mean, there's nobody in this country, I guarantee you, except those guys on that team, that would have told you that they were going to play like they did last night, and you would believe them.
Yeah.
And then they did, and I think that's, if anything, I mean, I think that's what's going to terrify these coaches that they're going to play against. Is thinking, again, you put anybody on a lie detector test, and you say, do you think Ole Miss is going to be able to hold people, hold Louisville below 28 points? You're probably going to say absolutely not.
No.
Well, if you can hold Louisville and if you can hold other teams to 21, that's almost. I think Ole Miss that's going to terrify coaches to think that if this defense can hold us to 21 points, we're screwed. 28 points, you got a chance. I mean, you're not going to outscore Ole Miss unless you unless our defense just completely doesn't play like they did last year.
Yeah. There's probably one team in the conference that has the talent to actually put up a ton of points and go score for score with Ole Miss as it goes. And speaking of that team, how much of a zoo is that trip to Bryant-Denny going to be?
Oh my gosh, I think that's going to be so fun. I think that's. I mean, I think Kiffin is going to poke and prod and just try to play as many mind games as he possibly can and just have fun.
Mm,
I mean, I think that's part um, of what's when you play Alabama, you have nothing to lose,
no.
and when you've got a team that looked like they did last night, um, and you know that it's going to improve. I mean, Alabama looks just strong. I mean,
Mm.
they look like who you think they are, but like I said, everybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. It's just how it is. Those guys are good. Your opponents are good. But when you get guys that can pin their ears back, and you've got a guy like Kiffin that can put game plans together and can do adjust, and you've got the personnel and you've got the ability to play with them, I think it's going to get. I think it's going to be a really fun uh, game.
Yes, it's setting up for a fun month of October at Ole Miss. Well, Bill, man, this has been fantastic. Thank you for stopping by for Rebel Rewind. This Bill Flowers coming to you from Birmingham, and we got to do this again, Bill.